All right, let's jump in. A privilege to start a new week, continuing our Chabura at Kesser Shem Tov, beginning with the beginning a new week with the beginning of this new revelation of Pnimius HaTorah, of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the prism of relationship. Where we begin with Kesser Shem Tov, Kuf Yud Gimel, and it's Kuf Yud Dalet, it's a Hemshech, they go together. And the tzaddik says like this, Kushem Ya Baal Shem Tov, B'inyan Mashakasa, there's a very, very famous piece. There's a question from the Baal Shem Tov regarding the pasuk Bechal, or the Mishnah, Bechal Yom Yoytze Baskal Mehar Chayrev. Every day a Baskal exits Har Chayrev from Har Sinai, Machrezes, Oylehem, Lebrias Melban Shal Torah. Woe are to creatures that they've forsaken the Torah. And this is what the Mishnah Aves tells us. Elsewhere, Shedarshu Cruz, over there also in Tavo Bon, right, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also making an announcement of their Amar Shomer Asa Boiker, and there too Umachrezes, it's a cruz. And here the Baal Shem Tov asks a very famous question: V'kushya Shem Ein Shemea HaCruz Lama Machrizin. I never heard that announcement. Every day an announcement goes out from Har Sinai. Woe is to creatures who forsake, right? Or another cruz, Shuvu Banim Shevavim, or Amar Shomer Asa Boiker, everyone should come back to Hashem, but nobody heard it ever. So what's the point? And if there's a person who actually hears this cruz, it's even worse. No one else heard it. Right? Who's going to come and say that they actually heard like an announcement from Shemayim? And even if someone comes and claims that they heard this announcement, which kind of fool is going to believe an individual that says that they heard something when it's Shemayim? Prove it. It's the easiest thing to claim. Right? That's how a lot of new religions started. When you have an individual who came back, somewhere and said he had a revelation. So anybody could say that. Anybody could say, who is the fool? Right? And automatically he'll be claimed to be a Navi Sheker, that he heard something that nobody else heard, and there's no backup, there's no proof to that. So what's going on here? So it emerges, why does the Mishnah tell us that Hashem is making an announcement if there's no utility to this announcement? And so the Heilige Baal Shem explained, based on a Gemara in Chagiga de Isser Shas, very interesting Gemara, that Rabbi Yeshua ben Chanina havikoi kame Kesar. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chanina was standing in front of the Kesar, the Caesar, the king in the court. Ach v'apikursa, and there was a certain there was a certain apikarious, there was a certain person who was totally detached from Emunah, who started motioning with his hands, trying to make it like with his hand, like God turned his face from you. God is like he sort of motioned to him as he's standing in front of the Caesar. So he made a hand motion back, a little hand motion. No, he's watching us. This was the back and forth. He said, he turned his face. He said, no, he's watching us. So then the Caesar saw, and he sees they're making hand motions, not the nicest thing to do, in front of a king, in front of a Kesar. He says, what's going on? Because that's the bechira. I'll just tell you a little bit more what the Gemara says. He says, what's happening here? So he told him. He said, he motioned to me that God turned his face from our nation. I motioned to him that God is still looking at us. So the Caesar said to the apikarios, so what did you motion back? He said, I didn't understand his motion. I didn't understand what I know what I did, and he understood that, but I didn't understand his response. And then the Caesar lost it. He said, a person who doesn't know the secret of hand motions, kamimalka. So he's standing there and he's making hand motion in front of the king. Saying, if you can do it subtly, that you'll both understand what you're saying, it's one thing. But what do you, it's like it's me trying to speak Hebrew to Israelis. I could say the first thing, but then they respond to me, I don't know what they're saying. It's like, why are you even entering into the whole thing in the first place if you can't? And he killed him. Katla, the Gemara says they killed him. So again, the Baal Shem Tov asks over here, he's using this to answer the broader question about the cruz, but lama loy dibru b'mefurish. Why didn't they just, why is the Gemara bringing this, right? Well, we're going to say that in a minute, but lama loy dibru b'mefurish, why didn't they have this conversation without hand motions afterwards? Let them talk it out. V'gam le'ezeh te'elas mevi hashas zeh. We always have to ask a question: why is the Gemara bringing this? The Gemara, it's not just like whatever's fit to print. Whatever, like just throw it all in. The Gemara is going to become mamish Torah Shabbal Peh, down to its letter. And there was a real system of knowing what goes in, what goes out. If something's included in a Gemara, haloi davarhu, even it could be the most arbitrary joke or something. Gemara has a sense of humor. You have to, sometimes hear the humor, the comedy in Gemara, but everything that's there is there for a purpose. So why is the Gemara bringing this? So the Baal Shem Tov said, he says, from here we see a hint, an ethical hint, a musar, guidance with regard to the kruzin that we discussed above. She'ena dibor. So he says, we see from here that there are ways of speaking that have nothing to do with speech. There are ways of communicating that are not verbal. And we see this from the Gemara. They were making hand motions, and they knew what they were saying up to an extent, right? But sometimes there are announcements that are not audial. Audial? Is that a word?
Audible, I think.
Audible? Yeah, no, audible means that you can hear it. I'm saying it's not just that it's not hearable. I'm saying it has nothing to do with hearing at all. It's not audio. It's not. Maybe we'll look it up afterwards. But it's nothing to do with the audio. Not just that you can't hear it. It's bechlal not transmitted in that way. When the Mishnah says that there's a cruz, there's an announcement. There's not like a loudspeaker. There's not an announcement going forth. There's no voice. There's no words. So what is it then? Huh? Verbal. Yeah, it's not verbal. But more than that. It's saying still more than that. There's nothing to hear. It's not just that it's not with words. It's not audio. It's not. There's no audio. There's no. It's not sound waves. There's no sound. It has nothing to do with sound.
No, yeah.
Whatever. Kesser. Yes, and yes. I know what I'm trying to say. I can't find the word. But yes, all of this is true. Put it all together. There you go. You cannot find the word. No, it's not the word, the sound. Okay. Anyway, so yes, there's nothing. There's nothing above. Ela olam hamachshava. Says the Baal Shem Tov, what's being communicated is a cruz in our minds. It gets directly communicated into our brains. Ki adibur hu gashmi, because dibur is already a physical thing. The raya is there, and the raya is ki malchusa da'arkei malchusa da'arkia. That kingship in this world is similar is sort of a representation, a mirror image of the malchusa da'ara. Ve'ein derech eretz lidvar hamelech, l'daber hamelech im sarav ha'avada v'yatzav ki beremes. Interestingly enough, the king doesn't speak to the people. The whole thing is hand motions. He doesn't need to say, you'll make a hand motion, you bring him water, you'll make a hand motion. There's no dibors. Everything is so atzili that doesn't have to be brought down into a gashmi way. So let's see how he's going to say it. Now he's going to explain. And that's what the Gemara in Chagig is telling us. Shegam kruzim hayotzim melech malchei amlachim malka shala'ilam. That the cruz, the announcement that comes forth from HaKadosh Baruch Hu each day, hu beremes. It isn't like everything in the Caesar's courtyard in the throne room is beremes, just hand motioning, because it's beyond dibur. So it's hinted. V'tzarich leida b'machig remes hakruz ha'idei machshava. And a person needs to be attuned to hearing these messages that are communicated very subtly. And here he says, here hurei tshuva. He says, anytime, there's a very famous klal from the Baal Shem Tov, anytime a person wants to be a little bit better, that's because you just heard the announcement that echoed forth from our Sinai. It means for you in that moment, it's a mini Kabbalah Satira. It's not stam. That we have. Some people call it conscience. People have a conscience. Some people call, people feel shame. If they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. There's a natural. Says the Baal Shem Tov, that's not stam. That's not inborn and sort of coded in from the outset. That's a new revelation of godliness that has come forth from our Sinai that is echoing in our inner world. Amazing thing. In that moment, there's a Kabbalah Satira. Hashem is calling me. You hear, it's not stam that I have inside of me this code, that's just waking me up or making me feel a certain way. This is a direct communication from Hashem on the level of panim b'panim dibra Hashem imachem. On the level of Anochi Avaya Lekecha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is calling us home. B'chol yoy mirhurei tshuva shel machmas hakruz. And which person, you can't go Baruch Hashem, all of us, I think, speak for all of us, who doesn't go one whole day, without having some sense, I want to be better. All of us, we're mavakshim, we're trying to grow. So what is that? That's Hashem. Hashem is calling out to us.
So that's the conscience?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, so I put a word to it, I call it conscience, so everybody has that. But the way that the Baal Shem Tov understands it is that a pang of the conscience is an announcement from Hashem calling us home. That's really what it is. Meaning the Baal Shem Tov always wants to bring Hashem back into the picture. So it isn't just a thing, a feature of the human being that an animal doesn't have. No, it's a direct call. So it's either that, right? Either b'chol yom hirei tshuva, yeshar dvar. A person who has his eyes open can see signs. A person who's mamish, and I'll say it's both are true. It's the objective reality that there are signs, because there are things that happen to a person. But the more a person's eyes are open, the more you see it all over. And then it's about how to interpret signs. You can go overboard, and all of a sudden everything becomes a sign, and you flip out, so you can't live life, because every single little thing's like, So a person has to, navigate and mediate and carry on in a balanced way. But ultimately, a person who's awake will hear the signs that Kadosh Baruch Hu is communicating to them things. And I think, we could go around, but I for sure have a whole list, of different signs, that Hashem has sent in my journey and continues to send. Number plate. Yes, it could be number plates, right? Especially Likutei Moharan number plates, right? The newly issued, right? Was it the newly issued LM? We're all LM, all Likutei Moharan, and exactly the Torah that we were learning. LM 73.
We did 24 and 25. That's why.
Yeah. Amazing. No, it was 73 also. I remember when we did Ayin Gimel. So a person's eyes open, he says, is a lemisha eine sechalai. A person whose eyes are open. People are not horses. People, nothing against horses, but people who are just going through life like without being aware. Especially horses. Not only are they a little bit less aware, but they used to put blinders on horses. So it's even a more specific example. They don't look left or right. They're not aware spatially all around them. The Mesav Resen, etc. So if we're not like a horse, if a person gets scared, a person gets shaken up, something happens, a person is reminded of the fleeting nature of this world, that's a message. That didn't happen stam. Everything is a message. It's a message to the collectivity of Klal Yisrael. It's a message to each yachid, to each individual. HaKadosh Baruch Hu awakens within us a midah, like we learned yesterday on Shabbos, for the purpose. Why do we have teeth? To eat matzah. Why do we have these feelings? To channel them to kedusha. That's why we have them, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give them to us. Hashem will awaken inside of us the various midos that, for a person who is a God-conscious Jew, should immediately elevate them to the side of Kedusha. Whatever it is that a person's going through, and that's, again, this thing that the Baal Shem Tov is trying to get across again and again and again. There is nothing outside the realm of service. Nothing. Bechol drachecha da'ehu. It could seem to be the most distant thing, no kesher to Yiddishkeit. It has every kesher to Yiddishkeit, because Malay Chala Aretz Kavayda. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there in that moment. And that's why if we have Hashem at the center of our minds, whatever it is that's going on internally, I see it in the context of its relation to God, wherever it might be. It's like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which literally, will ultimately reveal to be, as the Gemara tells us in the end of Tainus, that us at HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasas machal la tzaddikim, very famous, right? Hashem will make a circle for all the tzaddikim. He's going to sit in the middle. Everybody will point and say, Ine. Everyone will point to the middle of the circle. Tzaddikim live in such a way that even in this world, they see God as the center of their lives. And that I don't just mean it in a metaphorical sense, I'm using that word in a more specific sense, because if something is in the center and everything else is oriented around it, everything can be seen in relation to the center point. So there's a tzad of everything in life And I'm not just talking like in a speech, I'm using a mashal, but any circumstance, any dynamic, any situation, any simcha or tzara, chas v'shalom, whatever a person goes through, there's a tzad of that experience that's facing the divine, where it has some kesher to my avoda. So whatever emotion is being stirred up inside, reveal the tzad that's facing the light. Reveal the tzad, because there is always a side that's facing the light. It doesn't matter how dark the situation seems. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the center. Everything else is equidistant from and to that Ein Sof. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov wanted us to do, is to wake up to realize this is a cruise. This is a direct call from Hashem. When a person has a certain simcha, joy, Yidabik b'simcha savadas Hashem. Channel it back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bring it back into our gratitude to Hashem. Bring it back into our avodah. He says a person who's wise will hear these two examples and will be able to extrapolate from them all the other things that a person should constantly be reflecting vis-a-vis their avodah, their relationship with Hashem.
It's interesting though that he doesn't. It, in the words itself, there is a simon to it. The Gemara says, "Why is it called hachayev? Shemevi chor b'la'olam." The idea is that it's destroying the halama that there
beautiful.
is.
Oh, beautiful. Very, very nice. Very nice, right? That the Bas Kol enables us to look past the surface and to destroy, to tear away the curtain, and to realize Hashem is not actually hidden. This is the place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is hiding for us to be able to find Him. And
it's a bit like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai coming out of the cave and saying there's fires everywhere, because he could see beyond it, and in his reality he wants to burn away that
beautiful
layer.
Beautiful. Okay, let's take a look. Yeah, sure.
I didn't even get what's relevant to Malchut Yishmael.
Of?
Malchut Yishmael.
So he seems to be saying that in the court of the Muslim kings, this was their hanhaga. This is how they behave.
Just an example.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There was much less dibur there, and a lot more hand motions, and a lot more silence. So he was saying, because Malchusa de Ara is Kei Malchusa de Rakia, that's how Hashem operates also. So he'll send us signs, but we shouldn't wait to get an actual text or email. It doesn't come in dibur. It does not. Okay. Let's take a look at the next piece. Very, very sharp piece. Brace yourselves. I decided to include it because this is about Shem Tov. So we don't bring every single teaching. I'm trying to bring the ones that are most relevant. A lot of them are very Kabbalistic without, avodah. I'm picking the piece. You're welcome to go back and learn all of it. This is my own shikol hadas in terms of al derech avodah and the foundations, of Chasidus. So that's okay. So says the Heilige Baal Shem. Baal Shem Tov Zechar Levracha Pirish. The pasuk in Tehillim says, "Al Mashav Barasa B'nei Adam," and it's a reference there. If you look at the Mefarshim, to the Malachim that are asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they were mekatrig. Why are you creating human beings? Al Mashav Barasa. You're creating human beings for what shav? Look at these people. For what purpose? So says the Baal Shem, you have to read it as a question and an answer. Al Mashav Barasa. That's the question. When a holy soul descends into the world from above, and it descends down into the body of a human being, there's a tremendous opposition that's awoken in the higher realms from the Sitrach or from the Samach Mem. This is going to mess up his whole operation, because now he's not going to be able to fool people, seduce people. Everyone's going to be a bardas. Everyone's going to know all the tricks of the Yitzhar. Everyone's going to understand in the deepest way how to deal with this illusional force, and he's going to be out of business, the Samach Man.
I don't understand why particularly at this point. Why when the neshama goes into the world?
Because of the teachings that the neshama is going to bring to the world.
Okay.
So he's going to become a big tzaddik, and he's going to teach everyone how to become a big tzaddik, and there will be this. The Yitzhar will go out of business.
The risk gets renewed every time. The risk gets renewed every time there's a neshama.
This soul will bring back the whole world. Right? So why? So why are you creating this person? So what's going to happen? everything will be for naught, because the whole thing will be unwound, right? Or the whole purpose of creation, bechira, and so on. So it's a pretty good taina, or it's a good kitruk, right? Unless it's mamish the end of time and it's ready for Mashiach to come and bring the whole world back. But until then, he's right. So ad shenoisten lo neged ze ish b'lial. So in response to the kitrug, HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows to be born into the world, neged ze, in opposition to this holy tzaddik, ish b'lial talmud chacham sheidin yudai. He allows to be born like a
Jewish demon?
Jewish Talmud Chacham demon, Sheidin Yudayin, which the Chevra would learn Tar Yud Beis together, right? So we already understand this sugya, what that meant, right? Sheniver Gamkein, that he will also be born. His whole job will be to make fun of tzaddikim. Will be a big Talmud Chacham with a position and a Rosh Yeshiva. His whole job will be to machavek anything powerful that can actually elevate people and help them change, all the while that things can be maintained. I said it's very sharp. It's not me who's saying this, I'm just quoting the Baal Shem. And then there will be bechira. And then everyone will be able to choose. That there has to be always bechira in the world, and every person is constantly in a place where there's two paths in front of them. And so with that, he explains the pasuk. Al mesh shav barasa, says the Sitra Achra, you're creating me for nothing. What's going to be? And Hashem answers, no. Kol b'nei Adam. There will be all kinds of b'nei Adam. There will be a tzaddik Adam, and there will be the opposite Adam, and people will still have bechira. Don't need to worry. And they say this as a story, actually. Again, it's apocryphal. What do we know? But this is what they say about the Baal Shem Tov, that when his soul was about to be born into the world, the Satan flipped out, and he says it's game over. And Hashem says, no, there's going to be a snagdus. We're going to create that there should be a snagdus on it. Mm-hmm. And in that way, the balance will be kept. Because these tzaddikim have an extraordinary power. And when you talk about, for the Chevra who are learning with us Likut Torah in the morning, and people grow in their awareness of what Rabbi Nachman is, and you hold up this renewed experience, now having spent hours and hours, tens and tens and tens of hours, getting to know the kedusha and the tara and the brilliance and the etc. So beyond the word, really beyond the words of what this person is, and you hold that against society's vision of him based on ignorance and a lot of distortion and caricaturing of what Breslov is, of what Rabbi Nachman is. It's a masa satan. It has to be a masa satan. How these two things are so universes apart. I'm sorry. How does a person get in the same inyan of this tzaddik? On the one hand, tzaddikim kedoshim l'yoyim, Rabbi Levi, it's like Bender of Shmuel Shapira, people tzaddikim adar that no one heard of, and then a bunch of people spray painting Nanach all across the whole Israel, and that's what Rabbi Nachman is, and nobody knows. It's a halama. It's a masa satan, and that was the only way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have put this tzaddik in the world, because otherwise it's game over. Now people are beginning to discover, a little bit, and things are starting to wake up, and it's in direct opposition to everything else that's taking place, where there's such a strong pull to the other side. But we have to therefore understand, it's always, you can tell if something has a lot of asnagdos, there must be a lot of power there, and that's why. And so that was the Baal Shem Tov's understanding of that pasuk.
Wow. The words.
Yeah. So I do encourage the Chevra. I don't have time now to go into the whole thing. Go if you can listen to the shiur at the beginning of Torah Yud Beis. We clarified, what that means. It's not as dramatic as it sounds, and it doesn't mean that they are sheidim. It means that there's, in a sense, there's some force that can enter them. It can also be dealt with, but it can enter, and it's not them, and it's also part of the Anhaga of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't mean that they're bad or they're wicked or evil or even know what they're doing. It's just HaKadosh Baruch Hu sets the world up in this way, and it needs to be that way. I think it was the Mittler Rebbe who said it. Without this snagdus on the Baal Shem Tov, Chasidus would have gone off the rails. Without the Baal Shem, the Piasetzner Rebbe writes, black on white. Again, it's not my opinions. I'll show you everything inside. Black on white, he said, Polish Jewry would have collapsed completely. He said there would be no Jews left, no from Yidden left in he says Poland, but it's probably the whole Europe, without the Baal Shem and without that influence. He says that black on white in Shleisha Amar. Take a look at the first Maimer. Okay, kids, we're not gonna. I don't want to get. I'm sorry. We don't want to get too much into the whole thing with that. Okay, let's carry on and take a look at the next teaching. But let's just as a chasima on that piece, there always has to be a zelu umasa. There always has to be, because there's got to be balance and there has to be bechira. And that's the way it is, and that's the way it's got to be. And it's not good or bad. It's just the fact. This is the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. Okay, we carry on, and here the Baal Shem HaKadosh says the following. I think I messed up the numbering over here. So this is probably 117, but I don't want to say for sure. Not sure. Okay. Oh no. Oh, that's a copy. Oh, that's a copy. Okay, fine. So take a look. Yes. So take a look at the next piece. 117, and with this we'll finish for today. Yesh ta'al v'nafik. He says there are those who go in v'nafik and they come out in a healthy way. Avram Avinu went down to Mitzrayim. Shiyarad, that's ayil. He went in and v'nafik, and he came out whole. Shiyarad v'nales kol madrigas atachtoinus, and he came out and he elevated all the lower madrigas with him, which was prototypical for what happened with the whole entire Jewish nation a few years later, right? A few tens of years later, when Klal Yisrael went down to Mitzrayim, all of us, and when we came out with the Rechush Gadol of all of the Nitzotzos, the Kedusha that were there. Masha'en came, but there's another kind of person, Sug Beis, Hayard ve'enim yichayim lalos. People who go down and they're not able to come back up, they're not able to rise to the surface with the treasures that were only available to them, daika, because they had gone down to that place. Kamay shekasav Baal Shem Tov zechron l'bracha mashal. Like the Baal Shem Tov gave a parable, Shahim ma'avar derech yar, Moshav listim. There was a roving group of highway robbers passing through the forest. And it was a very, very dangerous place. There's still places in the world like that. It's if you go there, you can be attacked. In Somalia, different places, there are certain roads where there are gangs over there. It can be attacked. And there were two groups that went. Aleph hayashikar, the first group was drunk. Aleph hayabadas miyusheves, and the other one was totally with full awareness. And both of them were attacked by the robbers. They got beat up and they got pushed around and they got robbed and plundered and they were wounded. And at the end of the day, they just had themselves. They stole everything. Okay, so one group is drunk while this is happening, and one group is totally sober. And so then they passed by that very dangerous place, and they were victimized, and they got all of these things stolen. There were other groups that were heading in that direction who met these two groups. So then they met, let's say it was a group of drunks or one drunk. So how was the journey? How was the Shalom Eloi? Was it smooth? Was it okay? Is it dangerous? Is it okay? Hey, Shalom. He's like, no, it's totally chill. It's a great route. Ain't Shum Sakana Cloud. No, I don't know what you're talking about. He's totally plastered. He just got beat up and robbed, and he's b'chalal not in his right mind. So he tells him, he says, no, it's great, it's totally okay. And then he asked him, so why are you bleeding from your nose? Why do you have black and blue marks all over your body? And where are your clothes, for that matter? What's going on? He says, oh, it's so interesting. I have no idea how this happened to me. Okay? And then a couple of other people encountered the Pikeach, and they asked him the same question. He says, no, be very careful. Yesham listim. There's robbers there. And he tells them the whole thing. He says, please, I'm telling you, do not go on this road. So that's the mashal. What's the nimshal? And the difference between these two groups is the wise man who is in his right mind and consciousness, who is totally aware of the danger and the risk and the damage, he can warn others. Right? Just go either very quickly or go, armed. But this person who's he's just not in his right level of awareness, he doesn't sense the danger, doesn't realize he's being attacked, and therefore he's not going to be able to tell other people, this is not a wise thing to do. Bekach, and the same is true for the tzaddik. Tzaddik oived Hashem yoidea mimolchames yitzaharu umilistim shebederach oived Hashem shu mesukan. The tzaddik lives with a level of awareness that avails him the conscious awareness and realization that this world is a dangerous, dangerous place. Only Rabbi Nachman could say that this world is a gesher tsar ma'oid ma'oid. Now he tells you, not to lose ourselves in fear, but that it's a narrow bridge is very, very clear. There were earlier tzaddikim, maybe Rav Aaron of Karlin, it was one of the tzaddikim, can't remember right now who it was that said this. It was one of the early tzaddikim. He said, this world, it's even sharper than, well, quite literally. Then Rabbi Nachman talks about the bridge. He says, this world is like walking on the edge of a knife blade with hell on one side and hell on the other side. That's what he said. That's this world is a tightrope. Gesher tsar ma'oid ma'oid. Why? They were trying to live with neurosis and anxiety and stress because they understood that these things are really real. Meaning they had adjusted the intensity and the gravity of what it means to be a person in relation to the whole structure of reality. They understood it's not child's play. It's not nothing. It's not nothing. And I want to make this clear. It wasn't that they stressed the negative. It was the natural flip of the coin from just how positive things could be, just how positive we are, just how much dignity we have, just how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu trusts us, just how much we could accomplish, just how much. And the flip side of that, right, adjusted to B'shvili Nivra Olam, is if the whole world is on my shoulders, meaning but in a positive sense, right, that we could really make a change, and we don't, so dangerous. So they understood, he knows about the battles with the Yitzhahara. There are gangs of robbers that are and thieves that are on the derech of those who want to serve Hashem. It's dangerous. And a person lives a life of fear, a life of pain, to constantly be vigilant. How am I going to navigate? This matters. It matters. It really matters. It isn't just a side thing. Maybe I'll, Ramat Shach said, maybe I won't, maybe. If a person appreciates it, these things matter a lot. It's not arbitrary. It's not flippant. Not flippant. It's very serious. And the tzaddikim understood that. And they spent their whole lives trying to get other people to realize these things are real. These things matter. They matter. But the person who's not aligned in that way, he's like the drunkard. He doesn't see. No, everything's fine. Nah, don't take it too seriously. It doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. And that's what's going to be ba'olam haba. Like the Gemara in Sukkah tells us, right? That the tzaddik will see a mountain, right? And to the Rasha will see a hair. That the tzaddik will be so happy when it's time to leave this world because he considered this world to be a place of sakana. He considered this world to be a world of nisayon. That's why when a tzaddik dies, we call it a petira. Why is it a petira? What does the word petira come from? Pater, shenifter. He was mitzar olamazeh. Now he's freed. This world is a world of pain. It's a very heavy world. The tzaddikim don't want to be here. This is just a small little experience that we're having. They want to go. Ba'alam of this shikra, in this silly world of sheker. And we do our little avodah to bring a little bit of emes to the extent that we can. We don't have to complete it, but we have to do our little bit. Right? And then they come to the higher world and they're in their most ecstatic joy because they had seen this world for what it was. The Rasha doesn't want to leave this world. The Rasha quite enjoyed himself in this world, and he didn't live with that angst, with that awareness of Adam amal yulad hayoim la'asaysam. This is a world to do. This is a world to accomplish. This is a world to toil, to birth ourselves. He wants to leave. And then when he gets to that place, and then all of a sudden there's the awareness of like, wait a second, I missed the whole boat of what that was. Like, how did I miss that? I missed the boat. Hashem should bless us. We should be people who hear the kruz, right? That non-audial and verbal and audible message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending us all the time, internally, externally around us. There should be people who connect to tzaddikim and don't listen to the opposition and to realize what that's coming from. And Adrabah, that's the Satan's last-ditch attempt, to get us away. And we have to connect to tzaddikim tahirim that speak to us, that are helping us serve Hashem. And finally, to be like the Bikeach who goes through this world with an awareness of our power, how much we could accomplish, how much we should accomplish, how much we must accomplish, and so that La'olam haba, when it's time to go back, we can honestly look back on our lives and say, I did what I was sent to do.
Not to be on
Yasher koyach, not to be on cruise control. Cruise control. Ani haben ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני